This is a continuation of the prenuptial agreement between Gail Chord Schuler and Brent Spiner and the men on the marriage list. It keeps lost its spot. Oh, here we go. Okay. The use of these alternative medical treatments and the expenses involved as part of the required health maintenance costs of any ex-spouse who needs these services to maintain his or her health. The health practitioners must draft a statement. Let's go back. All health practitioners that Gerard Butler chooses to work with him in drafting legal documents about health maintenance costs must acknowledge acupuncture, chiropractic, and natural medicine as viable forms of health practice, and must allow, if necessary, the use of these alternative medical treatments and the expenses involved as part of the required health maintenance costs of any ex-spouse who needs these services to maintain his or her health. The health practitioners must draft a statement regarding the ex-spouse's health needs and the cost for these needs at the time of marriage dissolution, and must state under penalty of perjury and a fine of $1 million or more, if they are willingly and knowingly dishonest or unfair, what are the current health needs and costs of the ex-spouse. If any health practitioner involved in the drafting of this statement is deemed mentally or emotionally unfit to make this statement at the time the statement is made, then his statement will be null and void, and another health practitioner must draft the statement. Health insurance payments must be taken into consideration, and no spouse should be required to pay what health insurance covers. Also, both parties are required to maintain health insurance coverage during the entire marriage for themselves and their children if they live in a country like the U.S. without national health care. If a party fails to maintain health insurance, they must present evidence that they were unable to do so, and in this case, they will not be held accountable for lack of health insurance. This document must be signed by any man who is on the marriage list to marry Gail, which is the marriage list managed by psychiatrist and actor Gerard Butler, among others, who determines the rankings on the marriage list and who should be on it. Any man on the marriage list who has willing and knowing physical sex, literal skin, touching skin, and sexual intercourse with another woman besides Gail must be knocked off the marriage list. And when this happens, Gail will not be required to fulfill this contract with that man because he will be removed from the marriage list, and this prenuptial agreement with him will become null and void. If a man who has signed this prenuptial agreement has been faithful to Gail, but an accuser claims that he has not, the accuser must be tried in a court of law for treason against the United States of America or any other countries that may be involved, because such an attack on the character of Gail's fiancé is an attack on the men who support and love a Nobel Prize-winning writer and lawmaker who is saving the United States from a Holocaust. Treason in this paragraph is defined as any willing and knowing act designed to discredit Gail or a man who loves her to support the goals of those who desire to take over the United States and the world in order to set up a government similar to what Adolf Hitler set up in Germany. If the woman, false accuser, is determined in a court of law to be guilty of treason, she will be sued for damages to her country and for damages to the man who was falsely accused, and she must next be tried for the death penalty, because such a woman and those who support her are very dangerous persons detrimental to the freedom of the United States and the world. Usually such a woman is part of a conspiracy that may involve clones of the men who want to marry Gail. All persons involved in the conspiracy must be arrested for treason and tried in a court of law for this. If found guilty, they must pay damages to the United States or whatever countries are involved, to Gail, and to the man falsely accused or framed. All men who are on Gail's marriage list must read this prenuptial agreement, including this paragraph, and sign the statement below. I acknowledge that I have read the above paragraph along with the entire prenuptial agreement, and agree that if I have willing and knowing sexual intercourse with skin touching skin with any woman besides Gail, that I will be kicked off Gail's marriage list, and will forfeit all rights I have to this prenuptial agreement. I also understand that if I refuse to sign this document, that I cannot be on Gail's marriage list, and I cannot consider Gail for marriage. I also realize that by entering this agreement, that I will be engaged to marry the most targeted woman in the world, and I'm prepared to suffer the consequences of this decision. That I will be falsely accused, that my semen will be stolen and used to impregnate women I've never had sex with, or that my clone will be used to impregnate women I've never had sex with. I agree that if necessary, I will make public statements or appearances to deal with these problems when they come up, and that I will make court appearances to deal with these problems when they come up. I also realize that Gail will pay all the costs for all such legal proceedings or appearances, including expenses for airfare or other expenses necessary to appear on news networks, etc., from her legal winnings from previous lawsuits against the Jesuit order that arise from the matters discussed in the above paragraph. I understand that to be on Gail's marriage list, I must forfeit all privacy, and that the most minute details of my intimate moments with Gail will become public scrutiny and may be aired as part of films or broadcasts about my relationship with her. I agree to forfeit my privacy in order to prosecute those criminals who would harm Gail or to help maintain the reputation of the men on her marriage list, so that I can show that I truly love and honor Gail as my future spouse and can clear my name and reputation from attempts to discredit my feelings for her. Signed by future husband on this whatever day of month and year. In order for this prenuptial agreement to be valid, it must be read in its entirety on an international broadcast, and we're reading it right here. And all parties to the agreement, with the exception of Gail Chord Schuler, they're reading it also at the Quebec trial, which is taking place right now, must be present at the reading and must sign the agreement in public before the world. Marriage to Gail, the most targeted woman in the world, is a very serious matter, and those who enter this prenuptial agreement must show their dedication and devotion to Gail by publicly signing this in front of the world. Those men unwilling to do so must be removed from Gail's marriage list, and all their rights to this prenuptial agreement will be null and void. As far as payment of health care costs for an ex-spouse, these payments will not be required for conditions that the ex-spouse acquired after the end of the marriage. This prenuptial agreement is signed by both parties, the future husband and Gail Chord Schuler, future wife, on this blank day of blank, on this whatever day of whatever month in the year of whatever, at some place, city, town, state, country. By signing this agreement, in other words, although let me just put something. This prenuptial agreement is signed by both parties. So let's say it's Brent Spiner and Gail Chord Schuler on this, we'll make it 20th day of August in the year of 2011 at, I think it's going to be Quebec, Canada. And if you need to change, the information about dates and times, feel free to do so. By signing this agreement, we agree that we have made this agreement without force or coercion from the other party, of our own free will, and that we are not under the influence of any drugs or substances that would hinder our judgment. Witnesses to this agreement are, you have to have two witnesses in there. They got to put their names in there. We acknowledge, you can have two witnesses. We acknowledge that to the best of, and these witnesses will state, we acknowledge that to the best of our ability on this, 20th day of August in the year of 2011, or whatever date it'll be, at Quebec, Canada, or wherever it's going to be. Both parties have agreed to this prenuptial agreement of their own free will, and both appear to be of sound mind and free from the influence of any substances that would hinder their judgment or ability to make this agreement. Witnesses will sign here to agree to the above statement. Signed witness, and then with the printed name of the witness underneath the signature. That's signed witness number 2, and then printed name of the witness underneath the signature. This agreement will be filed with any and all courts of whatsoever country that may have jurisdiction over this pre-marriage agreement. Okay, I've been informed from Brent Spiner with Brain-to-Brain Communications that the trial that's taking place in Quebec, Canada, has decided to admit this as a legally valid prenuptial agreement. So, we're going to make it public, and so that's why I've made this YouTube video. I consider myself the wife of Brent Spiner right now, and number 2 on my marriage list is Vladimir Putin. So if anything happens to Brent, Vladimir will be next in line, and then they have 3, 4, 5. The rankings, as far as the rankings go for like 3, 4, 5, 6, I want you to keep that fluid, because I don't want to have to be forced to like date number 3 or 4 next, like if something happens to Brent or Vladimir. Keep it fluid, because I take my marriage vows very seriously, and I want to be very careful in who I pick after Brent or Vladimir should anything happen to those two. So probably your best bet would be like maybe like have put 10 men in a group, and I could like date them or something after if Brent or Vladimir pass on, God forbid. And yeah, don't have it set in stone who's number 3, number 4, number 5, so on. Give me a group to pick from. Okay, I just wanted to make this to make public our prenuptial agreement between Brent Spiner and myself.